I'm Eric Gunther, and I have been an interior designer for over 40 years and the present owner of a property that is referred to as Geph's Folie. It is, in fact, something people have never seen the likes of. Part of the property is the cottage that's directly behind me that was built in 1925. The house was purchased by Gephard Durenberger, who was a noted antiquarian. He expanded the cottage and later added another lot to increase the size of the garden, and then finally another lot behind that to not only further increase the garden, but to add a second building. And in 1981, the second house, which is now the main house, was created to finish the experience. He copied a Gothic-styled folly that had been a favorite of his and expanded that to include guest rooms and a kitchen and a dining room. A landscape architect that he worked with on his projects followed as an owner for a short period of time and added immensely to the garden. I took up the lead from there and for 20 years have worked on the garden and the interiors of both of the houses. I've traveled all over the world. I've been in more homes than most in my craft, and I don't think I have ever been on a property that transferred an emotional experience the way this home does. I say to friends and family, I am the luckiest guy on the planet that I have had the pleasure of living in this experience, because that's what it is. Behind me is the original Doheny Cottage #1. In the early 20s, Ed Doheny, the oil tycoon, kind of imagined a community in Capistrano Beach, which he acquired in its entirety along with half of Dana Point, to build a beachside community, and he wanted to create these charming little cottages to give his friends and family an opportunity to purchase a getaway from Los Angeles. This first prototype was built under what at the time was a probably 50-year-old pepper tree that is still on the property. He laid in the street that is now Camino de Estrella and continued his project by building a much larger structure on the cliff above the ocean with an incredible view. He began building 4 other cottages until a very tragic event that found his son murdered. He lost his incentive to continue and scrapped the project. However, the property is fortunate enough to have Doheny #1, which is a very special home. In the late 60s, Geph purchased the property and worked his magic to take it from a colonial revival style and make it more French in style. The windows and doors and floors really set the tone. It's impossible to create something that really feels authentic when you use modern building materials. What we've tried to do here is to make sure that it's representative of the experience of being somewhere in Europe, either in France or when you're in the other house feeling like you're in England or somewhere in between. The windows, although they were from the mid-20s, were not really old enough to have enough character. So Geph went to the Cotswolds and bought the iron doors and windows with their original glass. Then he went to France on another buying trip and bought another pair of windows and a 16th century pair of doors from a convent that now look out over the back door and the pool, with a skeleton key lock and everything, all of which are still functional and used to open and close it. The window behind me, which is the large arched single plate glass window that is typical of Spanish architecture, is the only window that he did not replace. Feel of the window is wonderful because it's a large window. It goes all the way to the floor, and from inside the house in the living room, when you look out through it, it just gives you a great vantage point of the area we're sitting in right now. Geph made the house appear to be 200 years older than it was when he purchased it. He popped out a few areas, expanding it. There was a small garage that was large enough for a Model T, which was eventually closed off, and a room was created with an additional bathroom there because it was too small for a modern-day car. And ultimately, we covered over a central courtyard, which was typical of these cottages, covered it over with a glass ceiling. The light on the inside of the house is beautiful now. He took the Spanish colonial front door and split it top to bottom and sandwiched a French-style antique door to the backside of it, with the idea in mind that as you pass through the door, you leave California and enter France. What was 2 bedrooms was combined into a larger master, and the kitchen was doubled in size by taking over a breakfast room, a small little service area, and the original kitchen and kind of reconfiguring it. The other small bedroom was expanded to create a den, almost doubled in size, and the living room was popped out in the back to create an overlook to a secret garden in the front of the house. Texture of the walls, the fact that the center part of the house is actually stucco because it was at one point outside, the terracotta floors, which are original to the courtyard, the painting on the floors, the wornness of it. We've pulled ourselves back from being too perfect because it's the rustic, worn charm that we're after, and I think you'll find it's a special thing. At some point in the late 70s, Gep had an idea that he would build a second house on the property, and he found a favorite folly of his, a folly being a building often on an estate, sometimes at quite a distance from the main house, that the owner would invite his guests to walk through a garden too as a little adventure, and there they might have tea or a special meal. So his idea was, I'll take this folly shape, which was unusual because of its pyramid design on the top, and I'll expand it a bit to add what is a small kitchen, almost like a scullery. He put bedrooms upstairs, but the main thing was the effect of this perfectly proportioned cruciform shape with the pyramid top on it. Just overwhelms you in a way that isn't off-putting. It's just, it takes hold of you. It's magic. You see the surface of the main house. There is something imposing about a building. The front door is significant and heavy. It's a 14th century, thick, heavy, wide door that's unusually short. It creates a different relationship with you physically than some enormously tall door where you feel tiny. In this case, because the header of the door is low, even though it's massive, it's more human in scale. You walk through into a small entry that, because you're coming from outside in, seems even more intimate. You step up a few steps into the building and experience an incredible change to 25 feet, an open area, a very large room, an expansion of light, and an experience of a myriad of color and pattern as it's decorated now. The floors are 19th century pine, unusually long and wide boards. The fireplace was a period piece, and most of the windows and doors were at least 18th century in age. The terracotta floor is antique French. The kitchen was already well on its way because Gep had done a beautiful job of a nod to Monet's kitchen in Giverny, where he had taken tiles that are the same pattern that are used and so recognizable. I added a vintage stove. It's a very unusual O'Keefe and Merritt, which is really special. I restored it myself. I wanted the dining room to look very period, as if it had been here for centuries. So when we paneled the room, we took salt water and applied it to the wood to open the grain to make it look as if it were dried from age. We gold-leafed all the moldings so that it would look like it had been a grand space, and then steel-wooled off 90% of it so it looked like it had been dusted over centuries and there was very little left just in the cracks. We painted the floor with a grid pattern to kind of give it flavor, and then sanded most of it off. The downstairs bathroom, a decorative artist who has done work for me for years, took a very famous wallpaper that was believed to be the first paper imported from Asia for the Royal Stockholm Theatre, and stretched the pattern up and drew multiple panels so that the wallpaper patterns fell in the places we wanted it. It looks as though it is wallpaper on a special stucco process where the wall is stained. There are even lines where it's the seams of the paper, but everything is painted by hand, and it's a real tour de force. One addition I made to the house was to take a space that was originally part of a workspace in the garage and expand it into a butler's pantry. So I created a tall ceilinged room that is unique to management of dinner dishes and entertaining. When I purchased the property, the upstairs where there are 2 bedrooms was pretty much a blank canvas, and so I developed those 2 rooms, put architectural details on the ceilings going up the stair hall, added a decorative railing, in an effort to get a softer feel. I have a reputation for upholstering walls. The master bedroom and the bathroom are upholstered. It's more vivid than wallpaper, it's softer, and it absorbs sound in a way that kind of gives you this hush. You feel as if it's got a hold of you in a very emotional, transportive way. Then as you step out into the yard and experience the pool and the 200-year-old pepper tree and just the feel of the garden, the size of the trees, it's almost atmospheric. You don't see the houses around you, you don't hear anything else, you just hear the fountain and the pool, and it just feels like you've been transported. The garden consists of an area that is just over half an acre. It's a 9-room garden, dividing the sections up to create almost a little enclave environment. It's a very private space with large vegetation and has been developed over 50 years of growth. So it's a very special, kind of emotional, atmospheric experience. You enter a large motor court. You walk through an archway that controls the space for a moment. You walk into the area that we're sitting in right now, where you have these hedges that create a forced perspective to a statue at one end and the cottage at the other. You go through another pair of gates, which are intentionally a pair, but you go through one side, very narrow again, making you aware, sort of touching and feeling the whole experience of the gate itself. One of the main focal points of the yard is a 16th century finial from a Gothic cathedral that is used to create a fountain that has koi in it. You expand into a view of the entire length of the garden and see the main house in front of you, which makes the main house more interesting. It frames it. There is even a palm tree that is out in front of the house that is immediately behind the pyramid, which almost looks like it's sprouting out of the top of the building. As we move forward into the center of the garden, we have a sitting area under a very large cassia tree that now, 60 years later, is enormous and creates a beautiful canopy over the sitting area and the shade and just the mood of it. There are 2 small covered sitting areas. We look to the other side and we have the swimming pool. Built in the 60s, not when the house was originally built. This unique statue at the foot of the pool and the water spilling out of a well head. The statue is actually Saint Fiacre, who's the patron saint of gardening. And up behind the swimming pool, a slight incline where we have the ancient pepper tree and the summer house beyond it. As you pass through a little gate and a low wall that designated the end of the backyard on what was the original Doheny property, you wind your way up to what was kind of a dead end, and so that's where a fountain was placed that's made out of a terracotta leaf that is enormous, and an actual leaf was used to press the form in terracotta, and then a garden off of the Folie, a cutting garden where there would have been vegetables or flowers. As you go up the path from the cutting garden, there is another area that's a bit of a collection. We planted a real thick grass there. The trees are very large. And I took 3 elements that are rather random and combined them in somewhat of a sculpture garden just to make people ask why. I added 2 aviaries, a large finch cage. There are canaries on the property, so there's this constant play of sound. And as you turn the corner of this little hedge or go through that little archway, there's a whole new compartment there that has this different experience. The path changes. There's a different texture on the ground. The plants change in color and style. And typical of an Italian garden, it's almost all just shades of green, and no color is better at being mixed and clashed with itself than green. We're accustomed to seeing hundreds or thousands of shades of green when we look at a plant. And so all of these tones of green just blend beautifully together. And there are just a little punctuation of flowers here and there, but it's not about flowers. It's just about lushness. And that's what the house is really all about, is it's hugging you, it's holding you, it grabs a hold of you emotionally. You can hear it and smell it and touch it. The house is bigger than any one of us. We all chose to make our specific contribution as our abilities allowed. What was created here by just fluke or by the talent or sheer will of everyone involved is very unique, and it's bigger than all of us. And it's something that we felt that we were stewards of, not owners of. And it's a distinct honor to have been one of those stewards. I'm very pleased to have called this home for 20 years.